Well, good morning, my faithful subscribers. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be totally acceptable to you, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Well, looking where I am today. I'm in my basement in a place where I hope someday I'll have a regular podcast studio. But for now, as you can see by the background, it's workbench and tools and stuff hanging from over my head. And I don't know, that's me. This is pretty much where I feel comfortable. Outside it's very hot today. Excuse me. It's approaching 102 today. And this is in New England. So, and I had to find a makeshift pair of glasses because my other ones fell apart just before I made this video. So enough of my issues. We all have grandparents. Some of us are lucky enough to know them. Some of us aren't. I was under 10 years old when my father's mother and father passed away. So this video is based on them and the experience I had that I can remember. I was probably only 5 or 6 at the time, but I can still remember going to their house. So this video, Secrets in My Grandfather's House, is based on what I remember and what I experienced when we visited them. I want to take you on a tour, just a tour of what I can remember. If I were to take a video tour in my mind of what I remember, I'll go through it with you. And I think you'll find this interesting. This is quite the thing to remember after 50 years. 50 years? No, I'm sorry. 65 years. I can still remember these things. So we used to arrive at my grandfather's house for a visit maybe once in a while. And there's only a couple that I can remember and one stayover that I can remember. But as you looked at my grandfather's house, it was a typical 1930, I think, well, it was probably built in the 20s. But I visited there 30 years later. Now, my grandmother and grandfather, they had, I think, 5 or 6 kids, and they were all in one house, and there were only limited bedrooms, so they were just piled on top of one another. But as you approach the house, it was typical. Had a front porch on it, had the big maple tree in the front yard. It was very close to other homes. And, walking up to it, you could go in the front door, which is very classic. It had the beveled glass windows on it. It was nothing fancy, but as a child, you felt like you were walking into a mansion. And as you go down the side of the house, which most of the time is where we entered, you would walk in to a side door, which you either took a left to go up 5 stairs to the kitchen, or you took a right to go down into the basement. Well, that always freaked me out, excuse me, as a child, because the basement was always dark. There were never any bright lights down there or anything. But eventually I got brave and I went down there one day, and I'll start in the basement. When you walk down the stairs to the basement, there was this monster of a furnace in the center of the room. It was 6 feet in diameter. I don't know if it was coal or oil, but the thing was huge, and it was intimidating as a child. It made noises, and there was, it was all dirty and everything. And you walked down, there was dark, and it was like a volcano. You know, it was like that thing Richard Dreyfuss built in his living room. That's a good analogy. You know, he made that mountain in his living room. Well, that's how I felt as a child looking at this furnace. And then when you go to the left, I think it was a dirt floor. There was workbenches all around the perimeter of the basement. Now, my grandfather, he used to do, as a pastime, I guess, paint by numbers. So we always had these huge paint by number paintings on the wall. I mean, they were big. It's not like these little 8.5 by 11 paint by number kits. He did paint by number that were 3 feet wide, 3 feet high, and they were displayed on the walls, and they were laid out all over the benches. I never figured that out, but I wish I had one of those paintings now. Boy. So that was the basement, but it was always dark. It was, you know, I was intrigued by the basement. As a child, your eyes are opened up to things, and they look 10 times the size that they are, you know, and they affect you emotionally 10 times. So going back up the stairs, you know, I mentioned you go in the side doors to the house and you go up a few stairs to your left, and there's the kitchen. Now in the kitchen, you know, I remember my grandmother, she was always at the stove, and there was always a bird cage. Now, my grandparents emigrated from England back in the, I want to say in the 40s. So there was a lot of English theme. And I guess one of the things was to have what they called budgies, which are parakeets. But that's the English term for a budgie. But there was always a couple of budgies in a cage in the kitchen. She talked to them and they would sing. And it was, you know, as a kid, that was cool, you know. Now, leaving the kitchen and going down a hallway to the front door, on the right-hand side, there was a telephone box. Now, not just a rotary dial phone on the wall. It was an actual box with a door that you opened up. Now, to me, this was cool because growing up, I lived in a more modern house with the phone on the wall with the 18-foot extension cord. But this was cool. This was a built-in telephone in a box on the wall under the upstairs stairway. And I just thought it was like, just incredible. I would open that thing 100 times while I was there. And I think I tried to make a call or something a couple times. Now, going down the hallway, continuing on down the hallway, narrow hallway to the front door, there was a closet there. Now, in the closet, there were some treasures. Every time I would, well, not every time, but the few times I went there to visit, in that closet, there was 2 things that I remember. One was what they called a pop gun. It was an air pump ping pong ball shooter. And it was a classic it had to be from the 50s. And you push a ping pong ball in the end, and you pull back on the handle, and it would create pressure and blow out the ping pong ball. So cool. And I would head for that immediately, you know. And then another thing in that closet, and I would always ask my grandfather to start it up, or my dad, whoever was there. I couldn't do it as a kid because it was very dangerous to use as a kid. It was a steam locomotive engine mounted on a piece of wood. And what you did was you filled a little container of water inside the boiler. And I can't remember if it was flame-fired or electric. I think it was electric. So you would fill the water, you plug it in, and it would build up steam. You see these now on eBay or whatever, they're selling them as classics. But It was an actual steam engine, and as it got going, it would go faster and faster and faster, and uh, the wheel would turn on the side of the engine, and there was a little lever on top where you could make it whistle like a train whistle, and so cool. I mean, these things are just classic. No, that was the closet. That was the closet. Now going to the left, there was the old. Uh, the old living room, and I want to say it looked like Archie Bunker's living room, but no, it was older than that. It was always dark. It seemed to be dark to me. I think I slept over slept over a couple of nights, and it was on the floor in that living room. Passed through a set of doors, and there was a kind of a formal dining room. It was never used, I don't think. There was always stuff piled on the table, and there was china cabinets loaded with stemware from England or whatever. I didn't understand all that when I was a kid, but now, boy, if I knew then what I knew now, I would be in awe with the things that were in that house. So while I'm on the first floor, let me take you out to the backyard, then we'll return to the inside. So you go out the kitchen door. Now you made a loop. You go out the kitchen door, and you're in the backyard. There was hardly anything. It was... So, as I was saying, I ran out of memory in my phone. It cut me off. So where were we? Going out to the backyard, there was like a 3-foot drop, a little hill, and kids were rolling down that constantly. That's all we did when we were outside. And I remember an old reel lawnmower, push mower. I would get a hold of that thing, and I'd be pulling it up the hill, rolling it down the hill. And my grandfather was getting a free grass cut at the same time. So next to the yard in the back, now this was like kind of in the city, but you were up on a hill, and over in the opposite side of the backyard was the rooftop of the house in back of you. So it was kind of cool being up on a hill like that as a kid. But next to the yard was an old garage. I don't think they had a car. No, they walked everywhere they needed to go to get groceries. And in that garage was a boat. This was the famous family project my grandfather worked on all his working years. It must have been another hobby, pastime or whatever, but it was an old wooden boat that he would be out there working on constantly. I don't think he ever got it in the water, I'll be honest with you. His wife passed away shortly after these visits, my grandma, and he lost interest in a lot of things, sadly. But every time, for a number of years, we went there to visit, and we would always go out to look at the boat, and maybe he got another 2 feet sanded down or painted. But I sincerely doubt, I don't know for sure that he ever got it in the water. But, God bless him. It was a good ambition. Back into the house now on the second floor. Remember I spoke about the telephone box? Well, that stairway went up to the second floor. Now, going up that stairway, obviously there was a long rail. Now, in the old days, these old houses, they had huge stair rails, so one of the preoccupations of us as a kid was sliding down the stair rail. So that would occupy us for an hour, going up the stairs, sliding down the rail, start over again. At the top of those stairs, there was a door in front of you, and then off to the right, and immediately on the left, there was an old bathroom, the only bathroom in the house. It was very stark. There was not much in there. There was a sink. I remember there was a window in the bathroom. And right in the middle, not in the middle of the room, but just standing out in the open was a clawfoot tub. Everybody bathed in there. There was no shower curtain. There was no showers. People sat in a tub and had all the old fixtures on it and everything. And I actually... when I stayed overnight there a couple of times, That's where I took my bath. It was kind of cool, kind of different. Uh, so that was the bathroom. I think there was another bedroom down the hall, but now one of those bedrooms was my, excuse me, my uncle's bedroom. No, it wasn't my uncle. It was my, you know, step uncle or whatever you want to call it. It was my grandfather's brother. Who used to sleep up there, and then it was eventually one of the boys. You know, you remember back then, family all lived together, so one bedroom could be somebody else's bedroom in a month. You know, you never knew. But I remember uh, yeah, my uncle, one of the boys used to sleep in that room, and he was in his 20s at the time or something. You know, he was getting ready to move out of the house. My dad actually got kicked out of the house at 16, was told, go to work, bring some money in, or don't come back, whatever. That's the way it was. Uh, so, anyway, I'm sidetracked. In that bedroom was a stairway. There was a door and a stairway going up to the attic. Now, that attic was creepy. I got to tell you. Every once in a while, I would get the nerve to go up there, but in that attic, and this was after my grandmother passed away. So I was freaked out with that whole thing as a kid, you know. And going up in that attic in the dark was creepy. So we'd go up there during the daytime mostly. Do you know, I still have, even as an adult, I have dreams sometimes about that attic. And they're scary dreams. But up in that attic were treasures. There were roll-top desks. There were beds. And one of my biggest thrills visiting that house was to go up in that attic and see those roll-top desks and open them up. And in there were fountain pens from the early 1900s, trinkets and gadgets. And I think there were some military medals and all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, it was just, that desk held more of my attention when I went there than anything else. But I always remember that. I want to think what else was in there. Just I can remember people used to, I think people slept up there. Some of my aunts or uncles when they were growing up, because it was 5 or 6 kids, and they were all sleeping in this somewhat tiny multi-level house. So, you know, I guess they put them where they could, you know. But I remember there being beds up there, and those desks. And boy, I wish I could remember more, but it was just awe-inspiring. But specifically, the fountain pens intrigued me. They were marble fountain pens, and there was ink wells up there, and you know, you had the little lever on the pen that you had to push, that you had to pull back to suck the ink up into the pen. It was just cool, you know. What did I miss here? Oh, I got the clawfoot tub, the telephones, the beds. I can't really think of anything else, but I just, you know, it was a great thing to remember. And, you know, some of the reasons for my videos here, if for anything, is to document, to have some history for my grandchildren, who I don't see much, unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, mostly cost and transportation and time and health. But maybe they can hear this someday and know a little bit about how it was back then. I remember my grandfather, he had many jobs in his life. He was a factory worker for a while. Then in his older years, he was a key tender for the cabinets at a local boys club. He was a chef at a kitchen down below the street where he lived. Remember, he used to walk to do all these things, miles. And yeah, he was a breakfast chef. That's right. He was a breakfast chef at this local restaurant down at the bottom of the street. I remember as a kid walking on the street where my grandfather lived, there was a television repair guy that I was very curious about. Every time I walked by there, the door was always open and he'd have TVs all over, torn apart. And that intrigued me for some reason, the electronics. I'm still intrigued by electronics. So nowadays, that's one of the reasons I think I like solar so much. And I'm always messing around with that and audio equipment. So, I'm sure you all have your stories, but there were many, many secrets in my grandfather's house. I'm hoping I can remember all of them. I think there was some unique doorbell in that house also, probably a chime of some type. But I do have some memories. Eventually, the house was sold, and my grandfather lived with one of his children for a while, and till he passed. And still have photos of him, still remember them. Like I said, I wasn't that old when they both passed. They were in their early 60s, and I was probably only between 5 and 7 years old, maybe, when they passed. So it's sad that I didn't get to know them more, but teaches me some good lessons. If I can ever stop, if I can retire, I can have more time and maybe get to know my grandchildren as well. So, kids, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you more. I really want to, but maybe that'll change. I'm praying about it. God, give me the wisdom to retire.